Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to my lab. So I've been waiting to get around to this video for a while now, and let me tell you, it's gonna be pretty interesting. You know what, I'm just gonna slip out of this stuff real quick. Oh yeah, about this. This is basically just my flight suit, because it gets pretty cold when you're flying around in space, so you gotta wear one of these, and you gotta wear an anti-inflammatory carbon composite mesh bodysuit. Yeah, it's pretty just standard stuff. So we're gonna go back till around 2080s. So in the early 2080s, basically what happened was this giant black hole called XB52-1 was rocketing our way in basically our little section of space. And what happened was our solar system, when a black hole is going toward your solar system, it's not going to be very good. This like gigantic black hole zipped past us. Pretty much the entire solar system was out of whack. Some planets, they got eaten up by the black hole, but a lot of them just since they were going so fast, they just start spinning around really fast around the black hole. And they didn't get sucked in, because they didn't go past the event horizon. Now, Earth, thankfully, didn't get sucked in, but it was orbiting super close to the black hole. Mars ended up in a more fortunate situation, because it went past the black hole and then had a super long orbit around it. Now, if you know anything about black holes and their distortions on space-time, the closer you are to a black hole, or the closer you are to pretty much any gravitational body, the slower time is going to be relative for you compared to other entities. For example, satellites, they actually experience time a little bit faster than people do on Earth, and they have to account for that, like when they're making GPS measurements on us, all that stuff. So Earth was orbiting super close to this black hole, right? And Mars was orbiting super far away. Now, that would mean that Earth actually experienced, it was an insane amount of time dilation compared to, I guess, what Mars would experience. Earth experienced, like every hour, like 100 years or so passed, somewhere around there. And when like 200 years passed on Earth, like millions of years passed on Mars. What was happening on Mars in this time? Or what was happening on Earth? Well, there was great societal upheaval, societal unrest. Things were basically very chaotic. Major powers in the world were at the brink of war. There were a group of persecuted people that were on Earth, and they decided, you know what, we don't want to be here, so we're going to move to Mars. And they actually ended up creating their own society on Mars. There were probably only like a few thousand people there, but they had their own small little area. This first colony on Mars was called Ares Alpha. Earth is in total chaos. Things are going bad, and it's probably going to take years before Earth recovers, right? Now Mars, they're pretty technologically advanced for their time, and they're pretty absent from the matters of Earth. And I mean, they don't want to go back to Earth because, I mean, they were going to put him into re-education camps and whatnot, and I mean, they didn't want anything to do with that. So people on Mars, they're like, you know what, Earth, you can do whatever you want. We're just gonna make our own colony here. Earth was basically sent back to the Dark Ages, and it ended up taking Earth around 200 years before they got back to a relatively advanced civilization. Mars, however, experienced millions and millions and millions of years in the time it took Earth to recover, because it took them 200 years to recover, and millions of years went by on Mars. While we were on Earth, I mean, we didn't know what happened on Mars. When XB52 zipped past us, like, there were a ton of asteroids that made contact with a ton of planets. Planets were bombarded, and we didn't hear anything back from them. So we assumed, you know what? I think that they're gone. So people basically ignored it, and they couldn't really research into it, and no one really cared about it because, I mean, Earth was in chaos. What happened on Mars? The truth is, we don't really know. All we know is that the people, number one, they survived the XB52-1 event, and then they created a huge empire. Now, the remains of this Martian empire are scattered about the solar system, and it's difficult to come across very many Martians anymore. But when we did leave Earth. We discovered their technology, we reverse engineered it, and we became a far more advanced civilization. But for some reason, the Martian civilization was all but destroyed. And we don't really know why it is. What happened on Mars was basically, since humans and the humans that were on Mars were genetically separated for such a long time, they basically became two different species. Humans pretty much stayed humans. The people on Mars, we're going to call them Martians, they separated into a bunch of different species of humanoids. Some of them, the regular Martians, I mean, they're probably the most numerous. They're basically just the inhabitants of Mars. They got used to the weaker gravity, and they ended up magnitudes more intelligent than people on Earth, because intelligence was selected for. It was a selected for feature. Mars set up several different outposts, some near the moons of Jupiter, some near Saturn. They set up these asteroid habitations, and there are probably thousands of these that orbited what used to be the sun, that was kind of orbiting the black hole in a binary system. The colonists of these different outposts across the solar system, they ended up developing into their own different species as well. We're going to focus on one of the most famous ones, and ones that we've discussed before on this channel. And they are, of course, the Blormphs. So the Blormphs were basically a species of Martian that adapted to living extremely close to the surface of Jupiter. Similar to the cloud cities on Venus, Martians, probably millions of years ago, decided that they wanted to create cloud cities on Jupiter. And in order to do this, they had to genetically engineer Martians to withstand the enormous gravity and withstand the radiation on Jupiter. These Martians eventually separated as a species from the other Martians. They lived in basically these blimp-like cities that were scattered across the surface of Jupiter. And from there, what they did is they started researching dimensional transport and actually going between third-dimensional planes, as did regular Martians. But what they specifically did is they found out a way to make organic tissue and organic beings actually be able to initiate a quantum zorb into different third-dimensional planes without technological aid. Martians on Mars, they figured out how to do this too. But Jupiterians were infatuated by that. They ended up finding a way to basically put themselves into a state of limbo between third-dimensional planes and basically exist in the fourth dimension. And by doing this, they lost their humanity and they turned into something else. Even within the Jupiterian realm of thought, about half of them thought that they should remain in the third dimension with other individuals and they shouldn't go tampering into the fourth dimension. But then the other half, they decided to completely immerse themselves in that dimension and completely detach themselves from the regular plane of existence. We don't exactly know when, but records indicate that sometime within their evolution, a very important event occurred, and a very destructive one occurred on Jupiter. What basically happened was some anomaly occurred wherein Jupiter's surface was bombarded with over 1,000 times the lethal radiation for a Blormph or a Jupiterian, which is an insane amount of radiation. A Jupiterian could withstand 100 times the lethal radiation dose that a human could. We think that it might have been a pulsar blast or some gigantic supernova. This event, it killed off most of the people living on these surface Jupiter colonies. The only ones who survived were the ones living in limbo between the third and the fourth dimension. In the following weeks past, the Martians call it the Magnus event. Following the Magnus event, colonies nearby, the surface Jupiter colonies, started to go dark. When search vessels went to those colonies, I mean, what they found didn't really help them out too much. I mean, they looked through the ship's data archive and they found out that there was a massive EMP that struck and everything was pretty much going normally until then. But then after that, everyone was basically gone. During one of these expeditions to a dark colony, the crew who was exploring there actually experienced what happened, and only one of them managed to leave and survive. What he describes is that when he was going to one of the dark colonies, he and his crew were searching for any survivors. And then the lights started flickering and the ship lost its power. He was looking around, and one by one his crewmates started, he couldn't find them. They basically disappeared. So he started leaving back to his ship's escape pods. And what happened was, as he was running back, he looked behind him, and then he saw like this shadowy figure. It looked like it was kind of opaque, it was kind of translucent. You could kind of see through it. It didn't look like it was completely a part of this world. It looked like a ghost almost. And it was reaching out to the person who was exploring this area. He was basically a Martian, so he was of weaker build, not as strong as a normal Jupiterian. And whatever this thing was, it grabbed him, it was strong. That actually ended up breaking like most of the bones in his shoulder. He started to feel like he was fading away with that thing, but he was fast. He ended up taking his quantum blaster and shooting it before, and it ended up taking it. This wounded it, but it didn't kill it completely. So he left the craft, got into his vehicle, and sped out of there. That's basically the first encounter with what we know today as Blormphs. What we found out is that Blormphs are Jupiterians that survived the Magnus event. And for some reason we don't completely understand, they feed off of the energy of conscious beings, such as Martians, humans, you name it. What we believe happens is that a Blormph, who is basically in limbo between the third and the fourth dimension, attacks individuals in the third dimension by going back into the third dimension and brings them back into the fourth dimension where their energy is fed on. That's what we believe happened to all the various colonies around Jupiter. So that's the story, how the Quantumverse, how the solar system became the way it is. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to comment something below. Tell me how you liked it. Comment future ideas of what you want me to discuss. And don't forget to leave a like. We want to make sure that we spread the message. As always, y'all better subscribe to Goosenav. Peace out.